This guy you're seeing here, this is Michael Brown, Dr. Michael Brown. He hosts a YouTube show called In the Line of Fire. That's the name of his ministry. And he's been around for a while now. I mean, he's been doing this for decades. He's an apologist. He's an evangelist. He promotes Messianic Judaism. Like, he was raised Jewish, but he's totally a Christian. He spouts anti-LGBTQ talking points. He runs a ministry called the Fire School of Ministry. Among other things, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, he has suggested, do you all remember Joe Paterno, that whole scandal? It was more than a decade ago now. But there was a guy, a Penn State assistant football coach named Jerry Sandusky, who did horrible things to children. Well, Michael Brown, when he was talking about that story, he suggested that Sandusky sexually abused children because he was gay. And this is what Brown actually said. Could it be that the Penn State sex abuse scandal involving a man allegedly abusing boys, meaning that his acts were homosexual in nature, suggesting Sandusky did it because he's gay and not because he's a predator? Like that? No, what the hell are you doing? But that is who Michael Brown is. This is a guy who is as right-wing as anyone you will see on Fox or Newsmax, except when he presents, he offers up this demeanor of, you guys, I'm just speaking common sense here. You'll never hear him yell on his show. He's just listening to all sides. But I'm the voice of reason. And I'm just here to tell you that these right-wing conspiracy theories are true. That's his demeanor on his show. So he's been doing this for a really long time. He puts himself out there as like a reasonable bigot. But back in December, all of this kind of came crashing down because this is the headline on one news site, the Royce Report, a Christian news site. But Michael Brown faces sexual misconduct allegations. Ministry hires third-party investigator. And this is a wild story, but basically a 21-year-old, she worked for Michael Brown decades ago in his ministry. And we'll call her Erin for now. Erin told the Royce Report she left the ministry because she felt trapped when Revival leader and Fire School of Ministry founder Michael Brown, a man she called Dad, would frequently cross physical boundaries. He would hold her hand, kiss her on the lips, slap her bottom, she said. He was supposed to be a spiritual father, Erin said. He was supposed to look after me. So this woman said Michael Brown sexually harassed her all these years ago. That's why she left the ministry. And here's the thing. After these allegations came out, Michael Brown said he told his board members about the allegations before they were published. Basically, the reporter said, hey, Michael Brown, I'm going public with this story. What do you have to say about it? And he said, give me a second. And he ran to his board and said, you guys, there are these allegations out there about me. And he said, I want to tell you what happened. And also, by the way, there's another woman, and I had an emotional affair with that other woman. Sure, she was my best friend's wife, but whatever. It's all in the past, is what he said. He told them he made mistakes in the past, but they were behind him now. He said he had repented. And he also issued a statement, like he did this before that article I just showed you came out. He issued a statement to the Royce Report, and you could see what he says here. It's one of those standard, I got to do some PR before this comes out. In recent weeks, very serious accusations have come to me and my board concerning events from 23 years ago. Blah, blah, blah. We wholeheartedly support our board's immediate decision to launch a thorough third-party investigation. This goes on for a while. He says of that young woman, Erin, who was 21 at the time, Nancy, his wife, and I did have a relationship with the woman in question and considered her to be like a family member. But she was not a family member, and aspects of my interaction with her, although totally non-sexual in every way, reflected a definite lack of judgment on my part. So this goes on. He says, I learned I made her uncomfortable. Don't worry, I apologized to her. We talked things through, and I thought everything was fine. And we chatted every once in a while. I did not know it was such a bad thing at all this time, right? So he says in that letter, the fact is that my actions toward her were certainly foolish and irresponsible, but neither sexual nor amorous in any way. Okay? And then he says at the very end, if it is true that for 20, let me show you this at the very end. If it is true that for 23 years she has carried this pain and I am responsible for it, I am beyond mortified and would plead forgiveness and the opportunity to bring healing and restoration. Her well-being remains our priority. So this is the statement he made, knowing this story was going to come out. Okay, so here's the thing. His board, and who's his board? It's buddies of his, right? Like that's your board of a Christian ministry. Just like most churches, mega churches have like the pastor who's the front man of the band. And then you have the elders who are behind the scenes and who set the salary, and they're always like buddy with the pastor. And so this board hired an outside law firm, they said, to conduct an investigation into this matter. And they said, don't worry, whatever their report is, we're going to make it public for everyone to see. But the thing is, the company they actually hired, the dude they hired to do the investigation, turns out his whole shtick is I routinely defend other sexual predators in court. And they were like, oh, these are bad optics. So they ended up saying no to that firm, and later on they hired a different firm called Firefly to investigate the matter. And at the time, this is in early December, Michael Brown tweeted this: because I can't make any comments on the current situation I'm dealing with until the investigation is completed, I'm going to deactivate my account until then. Which, by the way, you don't need to. You can just stop using it. But if you deactivate it, it means no one can reply to you and spread the story and tag you in it. May the Lord be glorified. Feel free to screenshot this post while it's up. Okay, thanks. I did. Okay, so that's what he posted back in December. And by and large, he has been out of the public eye since December. But guess what? It got worse from there. Because that woman in question, Erin, the 21-year-old at the time, she spoke with another person who was close to Michael Brown, and she's like, what the hell did that man just say in his private statement? He said he apologized to me and that we've been buddy-buddy ever since. That's not true. Let me show you. The guy's name is Ron Cantor. He used to work with Michael Brown, and here's what he says. Sarah Monk is her name. She's since made this public, so I'm not revealing anything I shouldn't. But he said Sarah Monk is Erin, and she's telling her story in her own voice. And this is what she says. I keep thinking about why Michael Brown won't just admit to what he has done or publicly repent and bring healing to so many who have been hurt by his actions and words. Why is he hiding? Why such a vague statement? Why did he lie in this statement? I know they are lies because I'm Erin. This goes on for a while, but she says, yes, Dr. Michael L. Brown put his hand on my butt. The one who condemned so many for a lustful eye, who screamed from the pulpit, repent of your sinful ways. The one who taught us to live holier than the day before. The one who preached revolution. The one who said being alone with the opposite sex was a sin and would get you kicked out of school. Yeah, that Michael Brown was alone in his office with someone from the opposite sex touching my butt as I would exit his office. This didn't happen just once, never happened in front of his wife, but it did happen privately. Then the kiss. Not just one kiss or two, but many. Once again, he had someone of the opposite sex in his office alone. As I told him goodbye, he sat in his chair and leaned up for a kiss on the lips, not the head, as he has told others. And yeah, I gave him one. I felt something was off. Why didn't I stop it? I don't know. I will just say in her defense, if you're 21 and your boss is the guy doing that, there's a power dynamic at issue here. So it's unfair to blame her for any of that. But then finally, so Nance, he said, I apologize to her from the heart. It never happened, said Erin. The idea that he apologized to me in this meeting is a complete fabrication. The only meeting we had was when I found the confession he wrote about another woman. Oh, so, just juicy gossip, good stuff here. But you get the point here. Michael Brown says, look, this thing did happen. It happened a long time ago. It wasn't that big of a deal. But if I caused her any pain, I'm sorry. I apologize to her. It's not a big deal now. And the woman says, wait a minute. All of that is a lie. It is way worse than what you are confessing to. And you did not apologize to me. What the hell are you talking about? So that's not great for him. And then we learn details about his emotional relationship with another woman who turned out to be his friend's wife. That came out. That was also disturbing. He then, even though he's on a sabbatical from social media, he released another video, which he has since deleted, where he said he tried confessing all of this to his church earlier, but everyone involved told him not to. I'm sure they did. Anyway, huge mess. So cut to a couple of weeks ago, late April. Guess what? Firefly is done doing its investigation into the matter, and they released their report. Here it is for you right here. This was the report that they put out. Firefly, Independent Sexual Abuse Investigations. And this is about Michael Brown. Look at the date on this thing, April 12th, 2025. So they just released this. This is 47 pages long. And basically, let me jump to the summary right here. Here we go. After reviewing evidence, this is at the very top. After reviewing evidence, conducting interviews, and analyzing the situation, the investigation concluded that Michael Brown's actions toward the two females were inappropriate and unacceptable for his leadership position within the ministry. Such conduct violated the ethical standards expected of someone in his role and undermined the trust and integrity essential to leadership within the church community. The findings highlighted the seriousness of the actions and emphasized the necessity of accountability to preserve the values and reputations of the ministry. That seems pretty damning. I mean, the thing that comes to mind in all this, and it's not an analogous situation, but like you remember Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife and the pool boy who they had fun with, and then sometimes his wife would be like predatory toward boys on campus that were friends with their kids. Like they had sex with a ton of people. And nothing about it was illegal per se. If Jerry Falwell was just a dude, no one would care. But the thing was the hypocrisy. He's running Liberty University at the time, where you're not like even allowed to hug someone of the opposite sex for more than a few seconds. And here are him and his wife like swinging and inviting strangers to their bedroom. Like, again, I don't personally care about his sex life, but Jerry Falwell made it his business to care about everybody else's sex life. So it was the hypocrisy of it all in that case. And in some cases, his wife went even beyond that. In Michael Brown's case, I don't think anything he did is illegal per se. And again, I do not care about this man's personal life, but he's running a ministry that preaches purity culture. And he promotes like the Mike Pence rule and the Billy Graham rule, which says you can't be alone with someone of the opposite sex because lust will take over, maybe. And here he is doing all those things that would get his own students kicked out of his school. So it's the hypocrisy of it all that is so disturbing. But I want to show you one other thing that is in this report, which is near the end. Check this out right over here. While it is impossible to definitively prove deviant intent behind these actions, like we don't know if he was trying to be weird about it or he just didn't know any better, as the only person who sent and or received sexually related communication with Brown is deceased, because that the woman he was having an emotional affair with, she's dead now. The patterns of his actions suggest that Brown knowingly contributed to the situation and created an environment where Sarah, that young woman from the past, she felt uncomfortable. And even if years later acknowledges that the relationship was inappropriate, although the lack of direct proof of intent leaves room for speculation, the numerous interviews, and in many cases corroborating documentation, point to a deliberate involvement of sexual misconduct within the ministry, which could also be viewed as sexual harassment and or a hostile work environment, especially given the power dynamics, is what they're getting at. So, okay, they're saying, look, even if we give you the benefit of the doubt, what you did was inappropriate, doesn't belong in the ministry, it was bad, and that's the best case scenario here. So, okay, that is pretty damning. And they have 47 pages of highlighting interviews that they did and emails that were sent and proof from a lot of people that say, no, I heard about this in real time and it was disturbing and we saw it happen and it was weird and it was inappropriate and all of that. So what do you think happens? This third-party investigative team They put together this report. They're going to give it to the elders of Michael Brown's ministry. Normally, you would say, okay, the elders got the report. They're going to publish it, as embarrassing as it may be, and they're going to say, sorry, Michael Brown, we did the investigation. It said this. We're going to have to kick you out of here, and we as a ministry will try to do better. That is what they did, right? Of course not. Of course not. Here's what actually happened. In response to that report last week, the elders released their own report. And basically, this is very long. I mean, it's 17 pages, I think, but it's still very long. But by and large, what do they say? Oh my God, it's insane. Let me make sure I can find this for you here. I'm going to jump back to me for a second. But one of the things they pointed out is I'm sorry. Sorry about that. What they said is we're ignoring what Firefly told us. That report, that 47-page report we just got handed, we're rejecting it. Why are we rejecting it? Because, for example, they say the definition of sexual abuse was stretched way too broadly. You see, apparently it's only called sexual abuse if it comes from the sexual abuse region of France. Otherwise, it's just misconduct. They literally argue that Firefly investigators overreached in their investigation. Here we go. Let me show you this summary from the Christian Post. The Elder Accountability Team argued in their review that the Firefly investigators overreached in their investigation of Brown's actions when they expanded their definition of sexual abuse beyond the historically narrow understanding of those terms to classify his conduct as sexually abusive misconduct. We believe a more accurate and historically consistent characterization of what he did is a moral indiscretions in the case of the wife and leadership misconduct in the case of the young woman, Sarah. So you guys, he didn't commit sexual misconduct. It was some moral indiscretions and some leadership misconduct, but it wasn't sexual misconduct or sexual abuse. Calm the hell down. That's just one of the ways they are rejecting what Firefly said. What else did they say? They said the report said Michael Brown groomed his former secretary, that young woman. They said that's unfair because it's just a grievous lack of judgment and a violation of the conduct established by his standards for the ministry. They also said the report did not include statements from Michael Brown or his wife, but you did publish statements from a lot of people who spoke out against what he did, so therefore you are biased, so we don't have to listen to what you have to say. Notice they did not say that those other statements were lies. Apparently, for whatever reason, the Firefly investigation didn't include challenges, like with Michael Brown saying, yeah, I didn't do any of that stuff. It's not their job to be stenographers for him. They did their investigation. They're like, we don't care what your excuse is. Here is what happened. And the ministry is like, well, you didn't include anything he said. Doesn't matter what he said. That's not what the evidence is. Then another reason this ministry said they're rejecting the findings is that apparently in the book of Matthew, chapter 18, there are rules to follow if you are accused of wrongdoing, and those rules were not followed. Why? Because Matthew 18 says if you are accused of something, you have to go to the person who is accusing you yourself and try to work it all out. And Sarah, the girl who was 21 at the time, the young woman, when she wanted to accuse Michael Brown of doing something inappropriate, she did not go to him first to try to resolve it privately. Again, power dynamic. She's young. He's much, much older. Why would she be expected to do that? How can you put this on her as if she didn't do something right? And the ministry says because they did not follow Matthew 18, these allegations were relitigated with accusations, judgment, and sentencing by a jury on social media. Like, what the hell? And then this is their conclusion. Let me pull this up for you right here. It was a 27-page report by the ministry. Here's what they say at the end. Conclusion. It appears clear to the Elder Accountability Team that throughout this process, dating back 23 years, Dr. Brown has been repeatedly questioned, about these two situations and has answered the interrogators consistently with honesty and remorse. That is not what everyone else says. He was not honest. He did not answer every question. The Elder Accountability Team believes it is time to finally put this matter to rest. This matter they just learned about like a few months ago. And allow these transgressions to remain where they should be, nailed to the cross of Christ. Holy shit. Cast as far as the east is from the west and no longer used against him, which is a very biblical way of saying everyone else needs to shut up about this. It happened a long time ago. Nothing matters anymore. Calm the hell down. Also, as this commenter points out, 23 years is a long time ago, but something that happened 2,000 years ago is solid as a rock. Bingo. Statute of limitations in our minds has expired. Therefore, no one can bring these charges against him. Unbelievable. So apparently conservative morality, if I have this right, says it's perfectly fine to emotionally and physically abuse other people as long as you do it a long time ago and then you're cool. Under that logic, there's nothing that can't be forgiven with the passage of time, even if the scars of what he did to people are still being felt by his victims long afterwards. Like, this is very self-serving if you're Michael Brown, and this does nothing for you if you are one of his victims. So what did Sarah, who went by Aaron in the initial thing, what did she say about all of this? When the ministry said, oh, that's cute that Firefly said you did something wrong, and we hired them to do this report. Yeah, we're just going to toss out everything they just found, and welcome back, guy who makes us money. What did Sarah say about all of this at the end? The report drew criticism from other whistleblowers and a victim hoping for public affirmation of the investigation and stronger discipline for Brown. Monk told the Roy's report it was a gut punch. What hurt the most was seeing how they decided they didn't like the wording of the sexually abusive misconduct when it came to me. That's why victims don't come forward, because those are supposed to be helping and protecting and counseling. They just don't care. I mean, yeah, she's not wrong about that. I wouldn't want to come forward either if this is what I had to put up with. I mean, good for her for coming forward. So again, here's the bottom line. Michael Brown did not do anything criminal per se, but his actions did violate the very rules his school promoted and that he says is essential for living a moral life, right? It is deeply ironic that Michael Brown believes that gay people in monogamous relationships contribute to moral confusion, which is something he has said, but a straight man manipulating women through a power imbalance like he did can run a ministry without a problem as long as all this shit happened a long time ago and he promises he'll do better. By the way, I was wondering, how come they didn't include his wife's statements in the Firefly report? Well, she released her statement to the ministry, and when you read it, you're like, oh, that's why they didn't include it. You are crazy. Like, she wrote this long, rambling thing. Look at this. I must state here categorically and in no uncertain terms, Mike is not and never has been a sexual predator, groomer, or deviant, nor has he ever exploited a single human being for his own personal gain or ego, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. That is not who he is and never who he was. This is fantasy. This is very Ginny Thomas vibes here. He has never attempted to overpower or manipulate any female or force himself on them for sexual or emotional or physical gratification, nor has he used them to stroke his ego or to get something from them. Never. Even though, by the way, all this stuff that he is being accused of happened when she was not around. This goes on for a long while, by the way, this statement. She said, what else did she say near the end? She says, although Mike's interaction with Sarah was certainly foolish and irresponsible, and I want her to stop there and just describe what exactly she thinks he did. That was foolish and not bad. His intentions were completely innocent. You guys, when he slapped her on the butt without her consent, it was innocent. And when he kissed her on the lips repeatedly, it was innocent. With absolutely no malintent. He viewed her as a father to a daughter. That is also not helping right now. Unfortunately, he has been made to look like a diabolical deviant and predator, and nothing could be further from the truth. That is not Mike Brown. That is not who he was and not who he is. And although he is eager to admit his fault and take responsibility for the things he did do and to ask for forgiveness without justification or even explanation, I cannot sit idly by while he takes the hit for things that never transpired and for the way his character has been portrayed. Because, you see, Michael Brown is really the true victim in all of this. And why is that woman lying about my husband? Like, you can tell why Firefly did not want to include this, I assume, in their statement. So this elder accountability team, they then said, we're going to let Michael Brown come back to doing all the shit he does because he's cool now. And this is what they said. Since Dr. Brown's sins were committed long ago, without any repeated behavioral patterns of like conduct, considering that these issues were believed to have been dealt with using biblical due process as they understood it in 2002, considering his recent confession and repentance of his sins, considering his willingness to step back from ministry until the completion of the Firefly investigation, which they do not care about, believing he is trustworthy, presuming the above recommendations will be followed, the Elder Accountability Team recommends that Dr. Brown be released to public ministry with the hope that a new dimension of humility and strength of character may be added to his already broad field of biblical knowledge, believing that the years ahead will be the most fruitful of all, marked by a greater humility and Christ-likeness. Because if there's one thing we know about Jesus Christ, it's that he loved slapping people on the ass without their consent. So the Elder Accountability Team is like, yeah, man, you're good now. We threw away and burned the report. You go back to work because you're the whole ministry and we need you here. And so guess what happened? I'm making this on Thursday. On Wednesday of this week, for the first time in like 6 months, Michael Brown released a video talking about this issue. And let me play you the first clip here. This is short, but this is what he says.
I know that as I'm speaking to you, some of you are thrilled to see me back online, and others, you'd rather never see my face again. So I want to make it clear, I'm not here to debate. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to prove a point. I'm not here to chase down this rumor or refute this allegation. I'm not going to be putting up screenshots and video clips and getting to some kind of internet war.
Yeah, of course he doesn't want to talk about it. Of course he doesn't want to debate it because the debate makes his side look bad. So he doesn't want anything to do to rehash this. There's one other clip I wanted to play for you here, because how does he summarize the damning report from Firefly and the elders rejecting what it said? Here's how he summarizes how all of that went down.
First, the investigation, then the results of that investigation were turned over to an independent team of elders. This was the process I was asked to submit to, and I said, yes, let's do it. The investigation was turned over to an independent team of elders. They looked at the results of the investigation, they evaluated me, and then they rendered their verdict. And on April 28th, they released me to resume ministry effective immediately. And that's why I'm here now speaking to you today.
So notice how he said that. He said there was an investigation, and then the elders looked at the investigation, and then they said I could come back. Like, he kind of skipped all the important stuff there. He acts like the elders' rejection of the investigation is just the final verdict, and that's all anyone should care about. Details, who wants to talk about the details? Like, if the investigation by Firefly said Brown was unfairly accused of everything, you know he would have mentioned that. Instead, he just glosses over the specifics while insisting, don't worry, the people who oversee me say I'm cool, so let's move on, everybody. Of course he says that. So you can guess what'll happen now. He will continue making videos as if none of this ever happened. He will go on moralizing as if he's the expert on it. His supporters will not give a damn, because since when do they give a damn about hypocrisy? Hypocrisy is never an issue for conservative zealots. It's why they will vote for a sexual predator while demonizing trans people and refugees and calling them threats to women. I will say not everybody who has worked with Michael Brown agree with this. One of his longtime ministry partners, Ron Cantor, the guy who published Sarah's statement on Twitter, he released a 16-page document like responding to the elders rejecting that thing, explaining like, here's why you shouldn't have rejected it. And he talks about like the sexual abuse definition. He's like, when you signed a contract with Firefly, they would have told you this is the standard we're using, and you would have agreed to it. And so the fact that they use this expanded definition, that shouldn't have come as a surprise to you. That is what they said they were going to do. That makes sense. He also says the elders promised they would hire a trauma-informed counselor to keep Dr. Brown accountable throughout the investigative process. But one was never assigned. It goes on like this for a while. And at the very end of this, look at what he says in his conclusion. I want to show you this. The elder accountability team believes it is time. Oh, this is what they said, right? I read you that. I'm sorry. There it is. Conclusion. Sadly, this report seems to have one goal: to get Mike back in the ministry. 5 people, none of whom are trained psychologists with experience in clergy sexual abuse, are telling 5 million people that this is over. Wow. And by the way, he's not the only one. There's another person who used to work with Michael Brown. His name is Robert Gladstone, and he posted on Facebook his own thoughts about all this. And I just want to zoom in here. While the accountability team's recommendations failed to account for something, it did emphasize the isolated nature of the abuses. But as I've stated before, they were not isolated to the past. Michael Brown makes it sound like all of this happened 20 years ago. No, it didn't. They continue with the victim's pain and the alleged ongoing lies. In other words, in my opinion, the accountability team rewrote history regarding the original problem, calling it something they prefer, and then isolating it to the past. And then they disregarded a very credible account of cover-up. So even people who have worked with Michael Brown are like, we are not buying what his team is putting out there. Robert Gladstone said the injustice continues because this report insults the survivors, further injures them, ignores many who testify of his cover-up and lies, completely misjudges the need for public exposure, and then commends a man back into ministry while giving those he mistreated further pain. And the thing about conservative groups is there's always a figurehead with way too much power, and then everybody else, no matter how much they warn others, are routinely ignored. So if Michael Brown's own ministry will not hold him accountable for what he did to violate their own standards, there is no hope for anyone there.